Oh, my dears, let me tell you something that still makes my bones tremble at night. You think you know your family, don't you? You think the ones you raise, the ones you feed, the ones you love with your whole being, will stand by you until your last breath. But sometimes, those closest to you carry knives sharper than any stranger ever could. Yes, sometimes the most dangerous place is not outside these walls. It is inside the very house you call your home. Before I begin, my darlings, do me a small kindness. This old voice doesn't speak often, but when it does, I want it to reach as many hearts as possible. So if you're listening to me now, please subscribe to my channel, give a like, and share this story with those who still believe family is sacred. It will mean the world to me. Now, let me begin. I live in a grand old English house, the kind that creaks at night and holds the whispers of generations in its walls. The house isn't new, not by any measure. Its stone walls are cold, its windows draughty, and its floors uneven. But it has always been mine and my late husband's, God rest his soul. We built our life here, brick by brick, memory by memories, and when he passed, I thought at least the house would be a comfort, a reminder of the love we shared. But I was wrong, so very wrong. You see, my son married a woman I welcomed with open arms at first. She was beautiful, clever, with those sharp eyes that always seemed to measure a room before she stepped into it. My daughter-in-law, Catherine. Oh, I thought she would bring joy into my son's life, perhaps even call me mother, one day with affection. But the truth about Catherine, my dear listeners, is that she never looked at me as family. No, from the very first day, she looked at me like an obstacle. It began with small things. A missing teacup from my collection, a lock on a cupboard I'd always left open, a cold glance at dinner when my son wasn't looking. But you know, I ignored it. I told myself, "You're being silly, old woman. She's young. She'll warm up to you." And I prayed she would. But as the months passed, I started hearing whispers. Not from Catherine directly, no, but from the housemaids, the gardener, even from neighbors who seemed uneasy. They said Catherine was often seen speaking to lawyers in town, that she was asking questions about inheritance laws, about how property passes on when the owner is gone. And here's the part that still cuts me, children. She didn't even wait until I was weak or dying. I was still healthy, still cooking my own meals, still tending the roses my husband had planted for me. And yet she was planning, always planning. One evening I overheard her. She thought I was asleep in my chair by the fireplace. But oh, these old ears still work better than she imagined. She whispered to my son, "Why should we wait? That old house is wasted on her. With what she has, we could start anew. Sell it, travel, live properly. My son, my poor foolish boy." He didn't answer at first, but silence can be louder than words. And that silence told me he was thinking about it. Do you hear me, my dears? The son I raised, the boy I carried in these weary arms, was already considering selling the roof over his mother's head. If you are still with me, listening to this heartache, then promise me something. Write in the comments below if you have ever felt betrayed by your own blood. Let me know I'm not alone. And please, share this story with someone who needs reminding. Trust is the most fragile thread in the world. The night it happened was colder than most. The rain tapped against the windows like impatient fingers, and the house smelled of damp stone. I was in the kitchen, boiling water for my nightly tea, when I heard the door behind me creak. It was Catherine. Her smile was thin, her eyes sharper than ever. "Mother," she said, her voice almost too sweet. "Why don't you rest? You must be tired. Come, let me help you." But her hands weren't helping hands. No, they were guiding me, firm and unyielding, down the hallway, past the stairs I'd climbed for decades. My stomach twisted as I realized where she was leading me. To the basement. Now, our basement is not like the ones in newer homes. It is stone and shadow, with a ceiling so low you must bend your head. and a smell of earth that clings to your clothes. My husband used to keep wine there, and old trunks filled with memories of his youth. It was not a place for living souls. I resisted. "Catherine, what are you doing?" I asked, though my voice trembled. She didn't answer, only tightened her grip. When I reached the last step, she pushed me, and I stumbled onto the cold floor. The door slammed shut behind me, and I heard the click of a lock. "Rest well, Mother," her voice called from the other side. It won't be long now. My heart pounded so loud I thought the stones might echo it back at me. I pounded on the door, screamed for my son, but the silence was heavier than the stone walls. Down there in the dark, time felt endless. Hours blurred. My breath grew cold, my hands numb. And in those moments of fear, I thought of all the sacrifices I had made. Selling my jewelry to pay for his schooling. Working double shifts when my husband was ill. Cooking meals when my own stomach ached. All for my son. The son who now left me to rot in the basement for a woman's greed. But my darlings, here is where the story takes a turn. Because Catherine did not know everything. She thought she had locked me away to take the house, to claim the inheritance. But there are secrets within these walls she will never understand. Secrets that belong to me, and me alone. Oh, do stay with me, dear ones. Subscribe if you haven't yet, because the next part of this story is darker than you could imagine. You think being locked in a basement is the end. No, for Catherine, it was only the beginning of her downfall. I sat there in the damp cold of the basement, shivering as the echo of Catherine's footsteps faded above me. The silence afterward was unbearable. Only the steady drip of water from a cracked pipe kept me company, like a cruel reminder that time was moving, even if I was trapped. Do you know what it feels like to be discarded, my dears? Like rubbish thrown into the dark. The weight of betrayal presses heavier than any stone wall. And in that moment, I wanted to weep. Oh, I wanted to cry until my lungs gave out. But something inside me, something old and stubborn, refused. This is my house. I whispered to the darkness, my voice trembling but firm. My blood, my sweat, my years are in these walls. No one, not even my own son, will take that from me. I felt my way along the walls, fingertips brushing rough stone, searching for something, anything. And then, in the far corner, my hand found wood. A trunk, my husband's old trunk. My heart skipped. I remembered it well, though I hadn't opened it in decades. He always told me, if anything ever happens, you'll find what you need here. At the time, I thought he meant tools, maybe old documents. But when I lifted the lid, oh my dears, my breath caught in my throat. Inside lay bundles of letters, sealed envelopes tied with faded string, and beneath them, a small iron box. My trembling hands fumbled with the latch, and when it opened, I gasped. Inside were deeds, property deeds, not only for the house, but for lands I never even knew my husband owned. And tucked between them, a will, his will, written long ago, leaving everything not to our son, not to Catherine, but to me. I clutched those papers like lifelines. You see, Catherine thought locking me away would make me powerless. But she never knew. The power was always mine. As I sat there, my mind sharpened. The fear melted into something else. Resolve. I was not going to rot in that basement. No. I would use every ounce of strength left in these old bones to turn Catherine's cruelty into her ruin. But first, I had to get out. The door was thick oak, impossible for me to break. Yet, these old basements have secrets. My husband had shown me once, years ago, a hidden passage. It was built during the war, he said, when soldiers sometimes raided homes. He never wanted to use it, and over time I forgot where it was. But now, with survival pressing against my chest, like a burning coal, I searched. Hours passed. My hands scraped stone, my knees ached from crawling. And then, I felt it, a draft, faint but real, slipping through a crack behind the wine racks. My heart leapt. I pushed with all my might, shifting the rack aside. Behind it was a narrow door, small enough for a child, yet just wide enough for me if I bent low. I crawled through, the earth damp beneath my palms. The tunnel was long, twisting, and smelled of dust and secrets. But I kept moving, whispering to myself, "You will not defeat me, Catherine. You will not take what is mine." When I finally emerged, I found myself in the old garden shed, just beyond the rose bushes. The night air struck my lungs like fire, and for the first time in hours, I felt free. But freedom, my dears, was not enough, because while I was crawling through shadows, Catherine was upstairs, perhaps already calling lawyers, perhaps convincing my son to sign papers. I could not let her win, so I stayed hidden, watching from the garden window, and what I saw, oh, it chilled me more than the basement ever could. Catherine was in the drawing room, sipping wine, her lips curled in a smile. My son sat beside her, his face pale, uncertain, and in her lap, my will, the one she thought was final, the one leaving the estate to my son. She was waving it in his face, whispering sweet poisons. But she did not know. She did not know about the other will, the one I held pressed against my chest, written by my husband, sealed with truth. At that moment, I realized this story was no longer just about survival. No, this was about justice, about showing Catherine and my son that greed and betrayal would never win against the strength of a mother's love and a widow's will. Oh, my sweet listeners, if you are still here with me, you must promise me this. Never underestimate the strength of someone who has been pushed into a corner. Leave me a comment if you've ever been underestimated. And don't forget to subscribe, because the rest of this story, I promise you, will leave your heart racing faster than mine was that night. For when I stepped back into that house, silent as a shadow, clutching the secret will in my trembling hands, I knew one thing for certain. Catherine thought she had locked me in the basement, but she had in truth unlocked the beginning of her own downfall. And oh my dears, the things that happened after, the games, the lies, the revelations in the dead of night. Even now as I speak to you, I feel the chill run through my veins. Stay with me, because this is only the beginning. When I crept back into the house that night, my heart was pounding so hard, I feared it would give me away. The corridors were dark, the candle flames long since melted into stubs. Only the faint glow from the drawing room spilled into the hallway, where Catherine's laughter carried like a blade across my skin. I pressed myself against the wall, clutching the bundle of papers against my chest. That will, those deeds. They were not just scraps of parchment. They were my salvation. My husband's voice echoed in my memory, steady and sure. If ever the world turns against you, remember, I have secured our home. Catherine did not know. She thought I was still locked away, broken, defeated, and perhaps that was her greatest mistake, underestimating me. From the shadow of the hallway I listened. My son's voice was soft, uncertain. "Catherine, are you sure about this? She's still my mother." And Catherine, with her sweet poison, replied, "Darling, she's old. She won't last long. Don't you want to live freely? Travel? Enjoy life? Why should we be chained to her crumbling walls? This house is wasted on her. Once it's ours, we can do anything." Oh, my son, how my heart broke to hear his silence, his weakness. But I could not let grief take me now. No, I had to be strong, stronger than I'd ever been. I slipped back into my room, quiet as the shadows, and lit a small lamp. My hands shook as I spread the documents across the desk. My husband's will, notarized, legal, binding. Every line of it left the estate solely to me. Catherine could waive the other will all she liked, but it was worthless compared to this. Still, I knew Catherine well enough to understand She would not stop until she had control. She was not the sort to give up, not the sort to bow down to truth. No, she would fight, lie, manipulate, and perhaps even destroy me to get what she wanted. That's when the thought struck me. If Catherine wanted war, then war she would have. But it would not be fought with shouting or fists. No, this would be fought with patience, with cunning, with the quiet strength of a woman who has lived long enough to know that the sharpest weapon is time. The next morning, I pretended nothing had happened. When I came down to breakfast, Catherine nearly dropped her teacup. "Mother," she stammered, her face pale. "I thought you were resting." I smiled, slow and deliberate. "Oh, I did rest, Catherine. Quite well, in fact. I feel stronger than ever." Her eyes narrowed, and for the first time, I saw fear flicker there. She wondered how I had escaped. She wondered if I knew what she had done, but she dared not ask, not yet. Over the next days, I played the role of the doting, harmless old woman. I hummed while watering my roses. I baked scones in the kitchen. I kissed my son's cheek and asked about his work. And all the while, I watched Catherine squirm. Every smile she gave me was tighter, every glance sharper, as if she were waiting for me to collapse or confess. But I held my silence, because silence, my dears, can be the loudest scream of all. At night, I hid the documents in a place no one would dare look, inside the hollow of my husband's old cane, which I carried with me everywhere. If Catherine ever tried to snatch them, she would find nothing. Oh, but fate is a curious thing. Just as I thought I was in control, something happened that rattled me to my core. It was a week later, a stormy evening when the house moaned with the weight of wind and rain. I had retired early, but a strange noise stirred me awake. A scraping sound, faint but insistent, from beneath the floorboards of my room. I lit my lamp and crouched low, pressing my ear against the wood. The sound was clearer now, like something, or someone, moving below. The basement. My blood ran cold. I knew every corner of that basement, every crack and stone. There should have been no one there. Yet, as I listened, the scraping turned into a low thud, rhythmic, as though something was being dragged. I wanted to scream, to call for help, but instinct told me to stay silent. Instead, I crept to the hallway, my cane in hand, and peered down the stairs. The door to the basement was ajar, its lock broken, and then I saw her, Catherine, moving by candlelight, her face pale, her hands covered in dirt. She was digging in the far corner of the basement, where the floor was bare earth. What was she burying? Or worse, what was she unearthing? My heart raced as I realized this house, my house, held more secrets than even I knew. Oh, my sweet listeners, I must pause here. If your heart is racing like mine was that night, then do me this kindness. Subscribe if you haven't yet, and leave a comment telling me, what do you think Catherine was digging for? Was it money? Was it something worse? Stay with me, dear ones, because what I discovered in that basement, it changed everything. I watched from the top of the stairs. My lamp dimmed low, so Catherine would not see the glow. The candlelight flickered over her face as she clawed at the earth with bare hands, sweat dripping down her brow. The sound of soil scraping against her nails turned my stomach. "What are you doing down there, Catherine?" I whispered to myself. She didn't stop, not even when her fingers bled. She dug as though something buried in that ground was more precious to her than life itself. And then, a hollow thud echoed through the basement. She froze, eyes wide, then frantically swept the dirt aside until the shape of a wooden box emerged. My breath caught. It wasn't just any box. I recognized it. My husband's second trunk. He had once told me there were two. One for me, one never to be touched. I had forgotten it existed. But Catherine, somehow she had found it. She pried it open with trembling hands, and the sight inside made my blood run cold. Bundles of money, yes, but that wasn't what chilled me. Alongside the money lay photographs, letters, documents with names and numbers, and worse, a revolver wrapped in cloth, its steel glinting in the candlelight. I nearly gasped aloud. My husband had been many things, but he had never spoken of this. What was he hiding? What kind of secrets had been buried beneath our home? Catherine lifted one of the letters and read it quickly. Her lips curved into a wicked smile. She tucked it into her pocket, gathered bundles of money, and whispered to herself, Finally, I've found it. I staggered back from the stairs, my heart hammering. Catherine didn't just want the house. She knew something about my husband's hidden past. She was after more than inheritance. She was after secrets that could ruin everything I thought I knew about the man I loved. I crept back into my room, sat on the edge of my bed, and pressed my trembling hands together. What had she seen in that letter? Why had my husband buried such things beneath our home? And most of all, how much did Catherine know? The next morning, I confronted her. Not directly, no, but with a smile as sweet as hers. Did you sleep well, Catherine? I asked over breakfast, watching the shadows under her eyes. Oh yes, Mother, she said, her voice clipped. Very well, but I saw the way her hand trembled on the teacup. I saw the flicker of triumph in her gaze. She thought she was ahead of me. She thought I was oblivious, but I wasn't. That night, when the house grew quiet again, I returned to the basement. My candlelight flickered against the disturbed earth. The trunk was there, half buried again, but lighter now. She had taken much of what was inside. My hand shook as I reached in. Among the scraps left behind, I found a photograph. Faded, torn at the edges. My husband younger, standing beside men I did not recognize. Soldiers perhaps. No. Their eyes were too hard, their suits too fine. One of them had a scar down his cheek, and written on the back, in my husband's handwriting, was a name, Blackthorn. My stomach twisted. I didn't know the name, but the way it was written, hurried, underlined twice, told me it mattered. Oh, my darlings, I sat there in the dirt with that photograph burning in my hand, and I realized the inheritance Catherine wanted wasn't just the house, or the money, or even the land. It was something far darker, something my husband had hidden away, believing no one would ever dig deep enough to find. And now, Catherine had touched it. I tucked the photograph inside my sleeve, close to my skin. As I climbed back up, I felt a fire in my chest. Catherine thought she was clever, but she didn't understand one thing. This was my house. These were my secrets to uncover, not hers. The next day, I began to plan, quietly, carefully, with the patience only age can teach. Oh, my sweet listeners, I whisper to you now. Do you see? Do you feel the weight of this? It wasn't just greed anymore. It wasn't just about taking my home. My daughter-in-law had opened a door that should have remained shut, and for that, she would pay. If you're still here with me, bless you. Write in the comments what you think the name Blackthorn could mean. And don't forget to subscribe, for the next part will take you deeper into the darkness of my husband's past and the dangerous game Catherine unknowingly stepped into. Because, my dears, the dead do not always stay buried, and sometimes the past comes clawing back through the dirt. The next morning, I awoke before the sun. My bones ached, but not from age alone. No, it was from the weight of what I had seen. The photograph burning like a brand against my heart. My husband's smiling face beside strangers, with eyes that told stories of violence, power, and secrets better left unspoken. And that word, scrawled on the back in his unmistakable hand, Blackthorn. I moved slowly through the kitchen, the floorboards creaking beneath my slippers. Catherine had already left for town. I knew her pattern now. She was clever enough to conceal her plans, but not clever enough to mask the smugness in her steps. The way she slammed the front door as though she had already won. It gave me time. I brewed a pot of tea and carried it into the study, a room that had belonged to my late husband. For years I had avoided it. The scent of his pipe tobacco still lingered in the curtains. The faint scratches of his handwriting still marked the blotter on his desk. But now I entered with new eyes, searching for what he had hidden, for what Catherine had begun to uncover. I pulled open drawers, sifted through papers, and finally, in the back of a locked cabinet, I found it, an old ledger, leather-bound, its pages yellowed and brittle. The key had been hidden in a false panel beneath the desk, exactly where my husband thought I'd never look. I sat down, my hands trembling as I turned the pages. Names, dates, transactions, large sums of money moving through hands I didn't recognize. And then, there it was again, Blackthorn, a word repeated over and over, tied to men with scars, men with titles, men who disappeared as quickly as they were written down. And suddenly, I remembered one night many years ago, before Catherine ever stepped foot in this house. My husband had returned home late. His hands smelled of gunpowder. His eyes had been wild, fearful. He had poured himself a glass of whiskey, sat by the fire, and whispered under his breath, "Blackthorn won't forgive me for this." I had thought it the ramblings of a drunk man, muttered nonsense, not meant to be heard. But now, decades later, it came back sharp as glass. He had been part of something dangerous. And Catherine, whether she understood it or not, had opened the door to that world again. My sweet ones, can you see the threads weaving together now? Catherine thought she was playing a game of greed, of houses and inheritances. But she was playing with fire, and fire, once lit, will consume all it touches. When Catherine returned that evening, her cheeks flushed from the cold, her hands clutching bags she didn't want me to see inside, I smiled at her. "Did you find everything you needed in town, my dear?" She avoided my gaze. "Just a few things for supper." Lies. I knew it. She had gone to meet someone, perhaps to sell what she had stolen from the trunk. But who? That night I listened again at the top of the stairs. And this time I wasn't alone. Voices drifted up from the basement. Catherine's sharp whisper and a man's low growl. "You said it would all be here." The man hissed. "Where are the documents? Where is the rest of the money?" "I told you," Catherine snapped. The old woman moves slower than a corpse, but she's suspicious. I can't just drag it all out at once. Give me time. A pause. Then the man's voice again, darker now. "Time is the one thing you don't have. Blackthorn doesn't wait. If you fail, you'll regret it." My breath froze in my chest. Blackthorn! That name again. Spoken, not as a mystery, but as a threat. The man left soon after, his boots echoing against the stone as he slipped out the back door. Catherine remained, muttering curses, shoving earth back into place to hide the trunk. I pressed my hand against my mouth to stifle a gasp. She wasn't just stealing from me. She wasn't just betraying me. She was working with them. Oh, my dears, I wanted to confront her then and there, to drag her into the light and demand the truth. But I didn't, not yet, because I understood something Catherine didn't. She thought she was in control, but she was merely a pawn in a game that had begun long before she married into this family. And so I waited. I returned to my room, my heart pounding like a drum, and I whispered into the silence. If you're still with me, my loves, write in the comments. What would you do in my place? Would you reveal her treachery now, or would you let her dig her own grave a little deeper? Don't forget to subscribe, my darlings, for you won't want to miss what comes next. Because Catherine's lies were beginning to crumble, and soon the walls of this house would echo with truths she could never have imagined. And when the past finally came knocking, neither of us would be safe. That night I hardly slept. The shadows stretched long across my bedroom walls, whispering with the voices of the past. My husband's laughter, his secrets, his warnings, and beneath it all, the echo of that man's voice in the basement. Blackthorn doesn't wait. I knew then that I could no longer sit idle. Catherine thought herself clever, but she was unraveling faster than a poorly knitted scarf. And if she brought Blackthorn into this house, then everything, my safety, my family's name, even my husband's memory, would be devoured. The morning came grey and cold. Catherine avoided me, her eyes darting like a guilty child's. She muttered about errands, about needing fresh bread from town, though I had baked a loaf only yesterday. Lies stacked upon lies. She left quickly, her cloak wrapped tightly around her shoulders, and once the door slammed shut, I moved. I returned to the study, the ledger still heavy in my hands. There was more, I was certain. My husband had never done anything halfway. If he hid a ledger, then there were keys. If there were names, then there were maps. I tore through drawers, pulled books from shelves, until finally tucked inside an old dictionary, I found it. A smaller notebook, bound in cracked brown leather, and inside, not words, but sketches, maps of London streets, countryside manors, warehouses near the docks, and scribbled beside them, codes, symbols, marks only those within would understand. And again, that cursed word, Blackthorn, oh my darlings! A chill ran through me so deep, I thought my bones would splinter. My husband had not merely known them. He had worked with them, perhaps for years. Whatever fortune we had built, whatever security this house had given me, it was not born of clean hands, and now Catherine had uncovered enough to be dangerous. I heard the door creak. My heart leapt. Catherine back already. I shoved the notebook beneath my shawl and hurried into the hall. Just as she appeared, her cheeks flushed from the cold, but her eyes were different. Too bright, too sharp. Oh, Mother, she said sweetly, though her smile didn't touch her eyes. You look pale. Everything all right? Just a touch of the weather, I replied, my own smile as brittle as glass. We danced around each other for the rest of the day, two predators circling, neither daring to strike first. But when night fell and I feigned sleep, I followed her once more, down into the basement, and this time I saw more than digging. The man returned, the same one with the growling voice. Catherine handed him something wrapped in cloth. He opened it, and though I could not see clearly, the gleam of metal told me enough. She had given him the revolver. My husband's revolver. You'd better have the rest soon, the man warned. Blackthorn won't ask again, she hissed back. I'm handling it. The old woman doesn't suspect a thing. Oh, if only she had known how wrong she was. The man left, slipping once more through the shadows. Catherine lingered, muttering to herself, gripping her candle so tight I thought it might shatter. Then she turned, climbing the stairs, with a look so cruel, so cold, that for a moment I wondered if she suspected me after all. I hurried back to my room, clutching the notebook beneath my shawl. My mind whirled. Catherine thought she held all the cards, but she had overlooked one thing, me. I had lived in this house for decades, seen storms come and go, buried secrets deeper than she could ever imagine, and I was not about to let her hand my husband's sins into the grasp of strangers. The next morning, I set my plan into motion. I told her I was feeling weak, that I needed rest, that perhaps she could prepare supper alone. She smiled. Oh, she was all too eager to be rid of me. But once she left me in my room, I slipped out, down into the basement again. I dug where she had dug, my hands trembling, but determined. And there, beneath the last of the disturbed soil, I found what she had missed. Another envelope, sealed and weathered. Inside, a letter addressed to me. My dearest Eleanor, it began. If you are reading this, then I have failed to keep my past from reaching you. Blackthorn is not a name but a shadow, a brotherhood of men who trade in power and fear. I walked with them once, and I left with blood on my hands. I hid what I could, but if they come again, do not trust anyone, not even those closest to you. The letter ended abruptly. The ink smudged, as though he had been interrupted. Tears burned my eyes. My husband, my love, had carried this burden alone, hiding it from me, thinking it would die with him. But it hadn't. It had lived on, festering, until Catherine's greed unearthed it. I folded the letter carefully, tucked it into my sleeve, and whispered into the darkness. You thought me weak, Catherine, but you have awakened a war far greater than you understand, and I will not let you win. My loves, if you're still listening, you must tell me. Do you think Catherine truly understands the danger she's invited into our home? Write your thoughts in the comments, for I read every word you leave for me. And do not forget to subscribe, because the storm that's coming, oh, you won't want to miss it. For Catherine's lies were tightening around her like a noose, and I was ready at last to pull the rope. My dears, I must tell you, the air inside this house has grown colder, not with winter's touch, but with something heavier, something unseen. It clings to the walls, drips from the rafters, and follows me even in the daylight. Catherine thinks she has everything under control, but she doesn't feel what I feel. The presence of eyes watching, waiting. Blackthorn is no longer a name on paper. It is here, moving through my home like a ghost. That morning, Catherine was humming in the kitchen, not the sweet hum of contentment, but a sharp, triumphant tune. She had always been a poor actress. I watched from the doorway as she stirred the pot. Her movements too quick, too nervous. On the counter beside her lay a scrap of paper with an address scrolled across it. She didn't notice me slip it into my sleeve before she turned. "Oh, good morning, Mother," she said, her smile dripping with false kindness. "You're up early. Feeling better?" I nodded, feigning frailty. "A little. Enough to want a cup of tea." She poured it for me, but I noticed her hand trembled as she set the cup down. Not fear of me. No, she feared something else, something larger than both of us. And that was when I realized she wasn't the predator she pretended to be. She was prey as well. The address burned in my sleeve. When she left the room, I unfolded it, tracing the words with my finger. A warehouse by the docks. My husband's maps had marked it too. Blackthorn's nest, perhaps. Catherine had no idea the danger she was walking into. Or maybe she did, but greed had blinded her. That night, the house was too still. I waited until Catherine retired, then crept to her door. And there it was. Her voice, hushed and sharp, speaking into the telephone. "Yes, I'll bring it tomorrow." "No, she doesn't suspect a thing. I told you, the old bat barely knows where she is half the time." My blood ran hot, but I held my tongue. I leaned closer, pressing my ear against the wood. "She has some papers, hidden somewhere. I'll find them. Don't threaten me. You need me. Without me, you'll never get into this house legally." A pause. Then her voice dropped lower, almost trembling. "Fine, but if anything happens, it'll be on your hands." She hung up quickly, footsteps pacing back and forth across the room. I slipped away, back into the shadows. My darling listeners, I tell you the truth. I wanted to burst through that door, to scream, to drag her into the basement she had once locked me in. But no, not yet. You see, I had learned patience over my long years, and patience was the one thing Catherine lacked. The next morning, I put my plan into motion. "Catherine, dear," I said sweetly as she entered the dining room, "would you be so kind as to fetch some coal from the cellar? The fire burns weak today." Her eyes flickered. Oh, how they flickered. But she forced a smile. "Of course, Mother." She vanished down the stairs, candle in hand. The moment she was gone, I moved. I entered her room, careful not to disturb the air, and searched. Not like a thief, but like a survivor. And there, beneath the floorboard, loose near the dresser, I found it. A bundle of letters she had stolen from the trunk. My husband's letters. She had hidden them from me, tucked them away like a magpie hoarding jewels. But the fool hadn't realized that the letters themselves were a weapon. Proof of Blackthorn. of crimes and betrayals, of names that powerful men would kill to keep secret. I slipped them into my own pocket, replacing them with worthless scraps of old recipes she would never notice, not until it was too late. When she returned, her cheeks smudged with coal dust, I smiled. "Thank you, dear. You've always been so helpful. If only she knew." That evening I sat by the fire, the letters spread across my lap. One in particular froze my heart, written in my husband's hand, addressed to no one. It read, "If anything happens to me, Eleanor must never learn the truth. Blackthorn will stop at nothing to keep their name buried. But if she finds this, tell her to burn it. Burn it all." Tears stung my eyes, but I did not burn them. No, my loves, I could not, for Catherine had already dragged the past into the present, and fire could not cleanse what she had unleashed. Instead, I tucked the letters away in a place only I knew, deep within the folds of my own sewing basket. For no thief ever suspects an old woman's needles. That night, as the wind howled through the trees, I whispered to you, my darlings. Do you see now? Catherine thinks she is hunting me, but she has stepped into a web woven long before her time, and I am no fly. I am the spider. Tell me in the comments, what would you have done with those letters? Would you burn them as my husband begged, or keep them, as I did, to turn the noose upon Catherine herself? And please, subscribe, for the night is growing darker, and Blackthorn is drawing near. You will not want to miss what happens when the shadows finally step into the light. My sweet listeners, I had lived in that house for decades, and yet I tell you truthfully, I had never felt so much like a stranger within my own walls. Every hallway whispered with secrets. Every creak of the stair reminded me that danger lurked not just outside, but within. Catherine thought herself bold, strutting about with her false smiles and sharper lies. But she had grown careless. She thought me too weak, too blind, too old. And that was her greatest mistake. The address she left on the counter weighed heavy in my mind. A warehouse by the docks. My husband's maps had marked it. Catherine's voice on the telephone confirmed it. And every instinct in my bones screamed that if I didn't go, if I didn't see it for myself, then Catherine would slip so deep into Blackthorn's grasp that neither of us would ever escape. That night, I waited until she crept from the house. She thought she was clever, muffling her footsteps, holding her cloak tight. But I knew every sound that house could make, every whisper of the wind through its old beams. I followed, slow but steady, keeping far enough that her candlelight never caught my face. The town was quiet, the streets wet with rain, cobblestones shining under the moon. Catherine moved quickly, glancing over her shoulder once or twice, but never far enough to see me. I kept to the shadows, my shawl pulled close, whispering to myself, "Steady now, Eleanor, steady." When we reached the docks, the air stank of salt and rot. Ships swayed on the water, their masts creaking like old bones. Catherine slipped toward a warehouse, its door half rotten, its windows blackened with grime. She pushed it open, glanced around once, and disappeared inside. I waited, my heart hammering, then crept close, pressing my ear to the wood. Voices, low, angry, sharp. "You're late," a man snarled. "I told you," Catherine hissed back. "The old woman is suspicious. She watches me." "Then deal with her," the man growled. My heart stopped. Catherine's silence spoke louder than words. Another man spoke, deeper, smoother, like oil poured over stone. "Do you have them?" "The letters." "No," Catherine said quickly, her voice shaking. "She must have hidden them, but I'll find them, I swear. Just give me time." The smooth voice lowered, almost whispering, but every syllable cut like glass. "Blackthorn doesn't grant time. Bring us what belongs to us, or your place in this game will end." Permanently, there was a sound then, a click. the sound of a gun being cocked. Catherine gasped. "I'll get them," she stammered. Just give me another day." Silence stretched, heavy and long. Finally, the smooth voice spoke again. "Tomorrow night, no later." Her footsteps moved, hurried, scraping across the floor as she fled the warehouse. I darted behind a stack of crates as she emerged, her face pale, her hands trembling. She wrapped her cloak tighter and vanished back into the night. But I did not follow her home. No, my loves, I stayed. I waited until the men's voices faded, until the creak of the warehouse door echoed shut. Then, with my candlelight low, I crept inside. The place stank of damp and smoke. Crates were stacked high, marked with strange symbols. A black thorn etched crudely into the wood. Papers lay scattered on a table, though most were already gone, taken with the men. But one, just one, remained. I picked it up, my hands trembling, and read, "Property transfer, Langley Estate, to be signed upon acquisition of remaining documents." Langley Estate, my home. They weren't just using Catherine to steal from me. They planned to take everything, legally, binding it with forged papers, twisting the law to their favor. Once they had the letters, once Catherine handed over what my husband had hidden, they would own not only my inheritance, but the very roof over my head. I stuffed the paper into my sleeve, my heart pounding. And then, a noise. Bootsteps. I froze, pressing myself against the wall. One of them had returned. The smooth voice, humming low, closer, closer. My candle sputtered, threatening to betray me. I pinched the flame dead and held my breath. He passed within feet of me, tall, his silhouette sharp against the sliver of moonlight from the door. He paused, as though sniffing the air, then muttered to himself, and left again. The door slammed, and I exhaled so hard I nearly collapsed. I fled then, clutching the paper, running faster than I thought these old bones could move. The night swallowed me, but I didn't care. I reached home before Catherine returned, slipping into my bed, clutching the letter to my chest. My darlings, I tell you, I shook that night, not from fear alone, but from the weight of truth. Catherine thought she was playing with inheritance, but she had invited wolves into our home. Wolves who would strip it to the bone, and I, an old woman, was the only one who knew. My loves, if you are still listening, tell me in the comments. What would you do now? With blackthorn circling, Catherine betraying, and secrets pressing like a knife against your throat. And please, subscribe, for the next part will bring you deeper into this storm. When Catherine at last realizes she is not the hunter, but the prey, because soon, very soon, she will learn that the house she thought she controlled does not belong to her. It belongs to me. The house felt different after that night at the docks. Not merely darker, but heavy, as though the very walls knew what was coming. I carried the stolen paper in my sleeve, all through the next day, my fingers brushing it whenever fear threatened to overtake me. Langley Estate, property transfer. They were circling like vultures, waiting for Catherine to strip the last flesh from my bones, before they swooped in to devour the carcass. Catherine moved about the house with more urgency now. She barked orders at the servants, slammed doors, paced like a caged wolf. Every time her eyes fell on me, her smile grew thinner, her words more forced. She knew time was running out. Blackthorn had set her deadline, and I could see the noose tightening around her throat. "Mother," she said at breakfast, her spoon clinking too hard against the bowl, "you've been looking unwell these days. Perhaps it's time we consider moving you into town, somewhere smaller, more manageable." Her words dripped with false concern, but I could hear the venom beneath them. She wanted me gone. I smiled, sweet as sugar. "Oh, Catherine, you are too kind, but I've lived here all my life. I couldn't imagine leaving these walls. Why, it would be like tearing out my heart." Her jaw tightened, but she said nothing more. Later, as she stomped through the halls, I slipped into my sewing room. My basket sat there, unassuming, filled with needles and threads. And beneath them, the bundle of letters. I spread them across the table, reading through my husband's confessions once more. Each page was a weapon sharper than any knife, proof of his dealings, of Blackthorn's crimes, of the blood that had stained our fortune. But to Catherine, they were keys to a door that should never be opened. I thought of burning them, just as my husband had begged. But no, not yet. They were my shield, and perhaps my sword. That evening, I overheard Catherine in the hall, whispering into the telephone again. "I don't know where she's hidden them," she snapped. "I've searched everywhere. Yes, I'll keep her busy tonight. I'll find them, I swear." Her footsteps moved closer, and I slid back into the sewing room shadows, holding my breath. The door creaked open. Catherine stepped inside, her eyes scanning the shelves, the cupboards, the baskets. My heart hammered. She was inches away from the letters, but her gaze passed over them, blind to what lay beneath a tangle of yarn. She cursed under her breath and stormed out. I exhaled slowly, clutching the edge of the table. My darlings, I tell you, I had never felt such triumph in silence. She searched like a fox digging for hens, yet the hens were safe under my watchful eye. But triumph can be dangerous. It breeds boldness, and boldness can draw blood. That night, as I lay in bed, I heard her footsteps. Soft, deliberate, stopping outside my door. The handle turned slowly, so slowly, and the door creaked open. I kept my eyes shut, breathing evenly, pretending to sleep. She stood there watching me. I could feel her eyes burning holes into my skin. Minutes passed, long and terrible. Then the door closed again, and her footsteps retreated. My heart pounded so loudly I thought it might wake the whole house. She was growing desperate, and desperation, my loves, is the most dangerous weapon of all. I rose at dawn, weary but resolved. I could not simply defend any more. I had to strike, not with violence. No, Catherine would expect that, but with cunning, with patience, with the strength she underestimated. So I began my trap. I left small trails for her to follow. A corner of a letter poking from a drawer, a smudge of dirt by the cellar door, whispers of secrets where she might overhear. And like a hound, she followed, convinced she was closing in. Oh, but she wasn't, my dears. She was walking straight into the snare I wove with every trembling stitch of my plan. If you are still with me, tell me in the comments. What kind of trap would you set for someone like Catherine? Would you trick her, frighten her, or expose her outright? I read each of your thoughts, and they keep me strong in this fight. And please, subscribe, for the storm is building faster now. Catherine is desperate, Blackthorn is waiting, and soon, very soon, the first blow will be struck. And when it comes, oh, it will not be me who falls. I knew Catherine's pride would not allow her to stop searching. She was a woman possessed now, driven by greed and fear in equal measure. And so I laid the first strand of my snare, a scrap of parchment torn carefully from an old diary, folded twice, and tucked beneath a loose floorboard in the library. Not too hidden, but not too obvious either. I made sure to linger in the room that afternoon, darning a stocking by the fire, humming as though without a care. Catherine drifted in, pretending to look for a book, but her eyes darted, restless, hungry. Within minutes, she was on her knees by the shelves, running her fingers along the boards. And there, a gasp, a thrill of triumph. She found the scrap and unfolded it with shaking hands. Her face twisted when she saw it was nothing but an old poem, faded ink of no consequence. She cursed under her breath, crumpling it in her fist. But I saw it, darlings, that flicker of belief in her eyes. She thought she was close. The next day, I planted another clue, a lock of hair tied with ribbon, tucked into a teacup in the china cabinet. Again, Catherine found it. Again she trembled with excitement, and again she burned with fury when it proved meaningless. Each discovery stoked her obsession. She began prowling the house at night, lantern in hand, her shadow stretching long across the walls. I would watch from the darkness of the stairwell, my heart thundering, as she rattled doorknobs, flung open cupboards, tore through drawers. But here is the thing about obsession, my loves. It blinds you. She no longer watched me closely. She thought herself the hunter, circling ever nearer to her prey. She did not realize the prey had grown teeth. One evening, I took my plan a step further. I left the cellar door ajar, just enough for her to notice. When she entered, she found footprints in the dust. Mine, drawn carefully with wet shoes to look fresh. They led to the far wall, where a false outline of a box had been chalked faintly on the stones. I watched her later, slipping down into the dark with a candle. She followed the trail, pressed at the wall, scraped with her nails until they bled. But there was nothing, nothing at all. Her scream of frustration echoed through the house, a sound so raw it chilled me to the marrow. From then on, Catherine unraveled. She snapped at the servants, slammed doors, until glass rattled in the frames, muttered to herself in long, frantic strings. I saw her hands trembling when she poured her tea. I saw the dark rings beneath her eyes. But worse, I saw her begin to doubt Blackthorn. One afternoon, I overheard her in the study, her voice harsh and cracking as she spoke into the telephone. "You promised me she wouldn't last this long," she hissed. "I've done everything. Everything. She's tormenting me. I know it. She's hiding something, she must be." A pause. Then softer. Desperate. "Please, give me more time. Just a little more." When she hung up, she stood there for a long while, staring at the receiver as though it had betrayed her. "Oh, Catherine," I thought, "you've begun to fear him now. Good. Fear makes people sloppy." That night, I placed the boldest clue of all. A folded letter, aged and yellowed, slipped beneath her pillow while she was out. It bore my husband's handwriting, copied carefully from the genuine letters, and a single line, "The truth lies where the roses wither." When she found it, she went white as a sheet. She rushed to the garden, tearing through the rose beds, ripping at roots with her bare hands until the earth caked her nails. I watched from my window as she knelt in the mud, wild and frantic, digging for something that was never there. The servants whispered about her behind closed doors. They said she was losing her mind, that grief had turned her strange. Some began to avoid her, ducking out of rooms when she entered. And still she searched. My darlings, do you see? The hunter had become the haunted. She had no idea that every step she took was guided by my hand. No idea that she was dancing, trembling and frantic. On strings I pulled with quiet, steady fingers. But here, too, lay danger. For the more she unraveled, the more reckless she became. And a reckless woman is unpredictable. One evening, as I sat by the fire, she stormed into my room without knocking. Her eyes were bloodshot, her hair tangled, her hands shaking. "Where are they?" she hissed. "Don't play games with me, old woman. I know you've hidden them. I can feel it." I looked up, calm as still water. "What are you talking about, dear? Don't lie to me," she shrieked, slamming her fist against the wall. "The letters, his letters. You think you can keep them from me. You think you can outwit me." I folded my hands in my lap, tilted my head just so. "Catherine, you look unwell. Perhaps you should rest." Her face twisted, rage and terror warring in her expression. For a moment I thought she might strike me, but then she spun on her heel and fled the room, slamming the door so hard it rattled the frame. I sat there long after she was gone, the fire crackling at my side, my heart pounding, but my resolve steady. The time was coming, my loves. Soon, Catherine's desperation would drive her to a mistake, so great, even Blackthorn would see her for what she was. And when that happened, the house of cards she had built would come crashing down around her. So I waited, calm and patient as the storm gathered. And I ask you, would you have the strength to wait as I did? Or would you strike first, risking everything in one bold blow? Tell me in the comments, for your voices guide me more than you know. And do subscribe, for the end of this tale draws near, and it will not be an ending you expect. The storm outside raged for days, rattling the windows, bending the trees as though the earth itself had turned against Langley Estate. Inside, the storm was Catherine. She prowled the halls, muttering, her face pale and wild. The servants avoided her, whispering of madness. I sat quietly in my chair, knitting, watching, waiting. And then, my loves, the moment came. It was midnight when the door to my room burst open. Catherine stood there, lantern in hand, her shadow stretching monstrous against the wall. In her other hand, the iron key to the cellar. You've tormented me long enough, she spat, her voice trembling. If you won't give me the letters, I'll make you. You'll rot where you belong, down in the dark. She dragged me through the hall, her grip bruising on my arm. Down the stairs, across the cold stone, to the cellar door. She flung it open, and the lantern light spilled into the abyss. Get in, she hissed. I stepped forward, slow, steady, my heart beating a drum in my chest. At the top of the stairs, I turned to her. You think the darkness will keep me, Catherine? No, it will keep you. Her brow furrowed, confusion flickering in her eyes. And that was when the voices came. The servants, roused from sleep, lanterns in hand. Mr. Jarvis the butler, old as the house itself. Miss Elspeth the maid. They filled the hall behind her, their faces grim, their eyes fixed upon her. And in Jarvis's hand, the bundle of letters. Catherine went white. No, how? I showed them. I said softly. Every page, every line. They know the truth. About you. About Blackthorn. About everything. She staggered back, shaking her head. You liar. You wretched hag. But Jarvis's voice cut through the air, sharp as a blade. It's over, madam. We've sent word to the magistrate. Mr. Blackthorn will be named in the morning. And you, well, you'll answer for what you've done. Catherine's face crumpled, rage giving way to terror. She dropped the lantern. It shattered, flames licking across the floor. The servants cried out, stamping them down before they spread. Catherine bolted, running down the hall like a hunted deer. But the house, my loves, had grown tired of her. Her foot caught on the edge of the rug, and she fell hard, her head striking the stone. She lay there, groaning, the fight gone from her. I looked down at her, my heart heavy but unyielding. Greed devours itself, Catherine. You sought to bury me, but in the end, you buried your own soul. They took her away at dawn. Pale, broken, silent, Blackthorn was seized soon after, his empire of secrets crumbling like ash in the wind. And me? I remained here, in Langley Estate, as I always had. The roses withered, yes, but new buds bloomed in their place. The walls no longer groaned with secrets. They breathed free at last. Sometimes on quiet nights, I still hear Catherine's footsteps echoing in the halls. But I am not afraid. No, my darlings, for I survived. I endured, and the house is mine still. And so I sit here, telling you this tale. If you've listened this far, I ask you, tell me in the comments, did Catherine deserve her fate? Or could she have been saved from her own darkness? Do subscribe, my dears, for there are many more stories yet to tell, and each carries its own shadow, its own flame. But remember this, always. The darkest basements cannot hold the truth forever, and even in the blackest night, a grandmother's heart can outshine them all.